Hey, Rob B here with Rob D, and you are listening to the Property Podcast. Now, this week it's one of those episodes that we're going to try and change your life. We do that occasionally. And we're going to list out the things that you should be really looking at right now and making improvements with. Because if you use this weird world and all the changes that have happened and treat it as an opportunity for change, then you can make dramatic differences to your life.
Welcome to the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning property investors come to be informed and inspired. We've all had a bit of a change forced on us this year. This is not the 2020 that we were promised. But I've spoken to a surprising number of people who've taken lots of positive things from it and have positioned themselves to come out stronger. If that's not you yet, or you think there's more you could be doing, then stick around. There's loads you can take from this episode. Our news story this week comes from The Express. And Rob, we lost you in a bit of a rabbit hole when we went onto the Express website to find the story, because you do like to get distracted by the pretty wild and wacky headlines on there. But we've pulled you back to talk about this story, which is titled, Chancellor's Stamp Duty Holiday Gives Surprising Spike to Home Values.
Yeah, we nearly ended up talking about China's mysterious 8,000-year-old structure guarded by military, which could hold key secrets, but Rob's made me talk about property, and rightly so, because this was on the front page of The Express, so a lot of people would have seen this, even if they haven't picked up the paper itself. And behind the headline is the story that property prices are up 3.8% year on year, and that's according to the figures from Halifax, and that is a big jump. Rob and I were expecting an increase, but 3.8% is really big. That's a real boost. Now, of course, stamp duty has played a big part of that. And there are other factors as well, and we will talk about those in the market update next week. But stamp duty has definitely played a part. Now, the reason why there's some surprise around this, and maybe big surprise for others, because some people were predicting a property drop even though stamp duty had been cut, is that, of course, we still have the coronavirus. And there is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of negativity there. But there's so much that makes up the property market, so much happening in the background. And I think it's really important to understand all of it to help you make better decisions. So next week, make sure you listen to the podcast, obviously on Thursday, because we're going to do our monthly market update where we'll talk about property prices, exactly why we think they are where they are right now, why we weren't entirely surprised by the increase, and what we think is coming over the next few months.
Here we are in August. And since early March, we've been in a bit of a weird world. We spent some time in almost total lockdown, and now, in most of the country at least, things are easing up in various different ways. Everyone's had a different experience of what this period's been like. For some, it's been extremely challenging. For others, they found they've actually enjoyed it more than they thought. But whenever you get a change of circumstance like this, especially if it comes with some kind of adversity, the important thing to do is to make sure that you learn from it and benefit from it and turn it to your advantage somehow. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. As we are, if we are, coming to the end of this period, how do you make sure you come out stronger? Maybe that's something you've already been working on, but if not, if you're not happy with the use that you've put this time to, or how things have changed for you and how the future is looking now, well, this episode is for you. We're going to be talking about various different uses that you could be putting this time to, things that other people have been doing, to give you some ideas and give you a bit of insight into what we've been doing as well.
Now, the first thing we want to talk about is goal setting. Now, you know, if you've listened to the podcast for a long time, that we are huge on goal setting. We really believe that it can transform your life. But here's a bit of a confession. In business, absolutely, we go through the process of goal setting. We talk about the future a lot, and in fact, we dedicate sessions to putting plans together for the future. So, goal setting. In my own life, I don't feel I've done this as much recently, and if I look at some of the things I may have achieved outside of business, it's not as much, and I've probably neglected areas of my life because of that. So recently, and the lockdown has made me reflect and think about things, I've started to get back into goal setting outside of business life, because you have to. It's not healthy just to focus on business. But if you take anything away from this discussion that we're going to have, I would say just do the goal setting. If you're going to take one action today, do the goal setting. But don't just write it down and then put it in a drawer and forget about it, or file it somewhere on your computer and never look at it again. It has to now become a habit, because just setting some goals, writing them down once, is better than doing nothing at all. but not much better, Rob.
No, definitely not. It's something you do have to revisit and remind yourself of all the time and make sure you really internalize this. It's very easy to get yourself psyched up for a day and get yourself really excited about what you're going to do, but that has to be followed through. And it's always a good time for goal setting. It's, as you've said, Rob, such a powerful thing to do. But now is an even better time than normal to be doing it, because there have been so many triggers to reassess your life. And maybe for you, things haven't changed much, and that's fine. But there are some people for whom the goals that they'd be setting now will be different from the goals they would have set back at the start of the year, because so much change has been forced on them. They're reassessing their life in different ways. So as an example of that, recently we talked about property megatrends in episode 385. And one of those things we talked about was some people moving out of cities. Because of more flexible working, they've got the option of doing that. And a lot of people have been reassessing their priorities around their living situation because they've been spending so much time at home and coming to think about it in a different way. So even if you did have goals that you'd set before all this happened, maybe it is worth going and taking another look. And if you did set those goals, but you haven't revisited them in that way that Rob was talking about, that's so important and making sure you follow through, then again, now is the perfect time to count this as a fresh start and start doing exactly that.
The good news is we know how to do this. The better news is that we've shared it, and you can use our goal setting course on the Property Hub website for absolutely free. If you check out the education section on propertyhub.net, you'll find that course and lots of others completely free that you can take advantage of. So if you're not a prolific goal setter, then give yourself the initial goal of going to watch that course, because it will really transform your life if you implement it. I can't stress how much goals have changed my life personally. And I'm so glad that I've refocused back on this after a bit of a blip, because I'm excited about what I can do now when I give things focus. It's interesting, I've looked back at some of my goals books as I've had this reset from years gone by, and it's incredible the amount you can do and can achieve when you reflect on it. You know, what have I done? When I set those goals years ago, how many have I hit? And have I hit them all? Absolutely not. But have I hit loads of goals over the years that actually, on reflection, I'm quite proud of? Yes, I have. So it's something nice to look back on as well, particularly if you go on to action many of them. Please do set goals. It will make a big difference to you. But Rob, we've touched on a couple of times already, then following up and creating that habit. And habits are just as important as goals.
They are. Goals give you the destination, and that's obviously critical. But then habits are the things that get you there. It's what you do every day. And you will have habits whether you like it or not. They might just not be good habits. Everyone falls into habitual ways of doing things. But now is the ideal time to review your habits, see which you'd rather not have, and see which new habits you want to create to support those goals. Why is it the perfect time? Because life is a bit more predictable. The most important thing when it comes to creating habits is having a consistent context around them. So having a certain trigger that always happens in the same way that then causes you to go and perform the same action in the same way. So when you're traveling a lot and you're going out all the time and every day is a little bit different, it's a lot more difficult to form a habit. But now your days are probably looking more similar than they were before and you're not traveling around. That makes it so much easier to start habits, have that consistency and to make it stick. And then once you get past the first month or so, habits are more resilient. And so you can make changes and it's less likely it's going to fall off. I find that when I'm traveling, either because I'm spending time abroad because I want to or traveling for work, that's when my newer routines fall apart, to be honest. But the ones that I've been keeping going for a long time, they carry on as normal because they are so ingrained now. So if you combine those two things that we've talked about, the goals and the habits, then you've really got a firm foundation for success.
And again, if you're struggling for inspiration on how to get started with this, check out episode 329 of the podcast, which the title was called Rob and Rob's Brain Hacks. And in that, we talked about habit stacking, because you need to get in the habit of setting habits. So a way of doing that is habit stacking. And to give you the basic overview of what that is, it's if something happens every day in your life that you consistently do, like having a shower, hopefully that is something you consistently do, washing. After that, you may go, after the shower, I read for 10 minutes. So the habits then stack. You can do whatever you want, but it's an easy way of getting into a new rhythm. So check out that episode. There's loads more in there as well. It was a really good one. Now, Something else a lot of people have been doing to come out stronger from the lockdown is working on their fitness, their health habits. And you only have to look at the roads and see the amount of cyclists out there. And the fact that I can't get the bike I want on Halfords after 2 months because it's always sold out, to realise that fitness has become a big thing right now in the UK. Rob, how have you approached it? Have you changed anything or mixed anything up, and what can others do?
I found that it's really helped my fitness, actually, and I'm probably in better shape than I have been for a long time. And that's for a couple of reasons. One of them, I think, is habits. Because my days are more consistent, it's easier to find a consistent time to go and do some exercise. And it's also having a bit more time in general, because I'm not travelling to meetings and things like that. I think what's really interesting is how many people I've spoken to who used to be avid gym goers and have said that actually they're now going to cancel their membership because they can exercise perfectly well in other ways. Cycling, you've talked about, Rob, definitely. There are loads of bikes on the road. I've seen lots of people running, and I've also in the parks around where I live seen people lose a lot of their inhibitions about exercising in public. You get people doing some really elaborate routines just in the middle of parks. People seem to be realising that you don't need a fancy gym or lots of equipment to make this stuff happen. I will say, though, that we have been through this lockdown during the spring and summer. We might see people going back to the gym and fewer bikes on the road when those mornings and evenings start drawing in a bit and the temperature drops.
It is lovely to see, though, that so many people like cycling, and I hope that's a trend that continues, and particularly in cities as well. Less cars, please. But very much linked to fitness. Something else, if you haven't reset it already, that you probably want to work on now, because you'll really need it if you've not been working on this, is mental health. Mental health, fantastically, has been talked about a lot more over the last few years. It's not a taboo subject anymore. In fact, it can even be trendy in some quarters because people just love talking about it. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's good that it's just a normal conversation. And for lots of people during lockdown, they've struggled, and understandably so, because a lot of freedoms have been taken away. And the media has been quite a scary place. The events have been scary as well. But even when things are calmer, the media still needs to be sensational, and they are, and they will continue to be. So being aware of your own mental health is really important. And I've definitely found myself this year meditating more than I ever have before. And I've really enjoyed that. I really have. I consider myself quite mentally resilient, but I'm sure a big part of that is because of the habit of meditation. Doesn't have to be a big thing. It can just be 10 minutes a day. And it amazes me the amount of people who just dismiss meditation and go, oh, I can't do that, I can't switch off. I promise you, and Rob will testify to this, when I'm working or I'm in ideas mode, I'm 100 miles an hour. My brain is constantly going like the clappers. So you would understandably come to the conclusion that I would struggle with meditation. But no, it actually, because I'm like that, I value it even more. So don't use excuses to not trying it. There's loads of apps out there. There's loads of free meditations. You can find them on YouTube. You can find them through apps that we've recommended in the past. There is no reason not to try this. Rob, I know you practice meditation as well. Is that something that has increased, decreased for you? And are you doing anything else?
Weirdly, it's not something I've picked up during lockdown. It's something I've kind of done in phases for years. I've gone through like a couple of months of doing it every day. Then for some reason, it will completely fall off. The habit will be broken. And it'll take a while till I get back into it again. But I don't think you necessarily need to be meditating every day to get the benefit from it. Because I think even if you just do it for a bit, it builds up some base level resilience, and it gives you some techniques that you can use. And something that you've talked about on the podcast before, Rob, that I think is really important is being able to snap yourself out of bad moods or stressed moods and things like that quickly. Like you've said that it happens to everyone. You always get those feelings, but with practice, you can get yourself out of those moods more quickly. So it might be half an hour rather than a couple of days. And I think that is such an important skill to have. And that's a skill that I think I've improved on in recent years. During the last few months, I've definitely had times when I've found certain things heavy going around dealing with being cooped up and things like that, but I've always managed to get out of it pretty quickly. And it doesn't have to be meditation. There's lots of things that you can do to work on your mental health. And I was listening to a podcast the other day that said that there was a danger of that, the words mental health being used to kind of imply a problem, like having a problem with your mental health. But it shouldn't be that way at all. It's like if you don't just talk about your physical health when you've got a problem. Your physical health is something that even when everything's basically fine, you can still work on and you can still improve. And I think having that attitude to your mental health as well, through whatever technique it is, and maybe trying out different techniques till you find something fits, fit is a really important thing to do. Because if you do that under normal circumstances, it means that by the time things do get a bit challenging, which they have for everyone recently, but will do at different times for different individuals for other reasons, it means that you've got those skills and a bit of resilience to draw on. And that makes such a difference.
Yeah, I love that. And I completely agree. Now, something else to consider working on if you haven't already is your education. We know lots of you are, because the numbers on our website, our podcasts, pretty much any content we're creating right now are breaking records. And that's because the content is education and the education is free. And lots of people are taking the opportunity right now to go, you know what? I'm going to get myself educated. I'm going to put myself in a better place. And that's amazing to see that happening. And the fact that you're listening to this shows that you are doing this to a level already. Can you do more? That's something you need to consider. I've definitely been reading more. I'm a reader already, so it wasn't something that's new in my life, but definitely up the stakes because you don't have those commutes or travel, and I was doing a lot of that before lockdown. So that's been an unexpected upside for me personally. So we're not going to harp on too much here because, as I said, you're listening, so I reckon you're going to have this one nailed and you know what to do to take it further if you want to.
Yeah, and very pleasingly, our content around economics has been super popular. Lots of people educating themselves about that. We've said on the podcast before, it was the last financial crisis that got us interested in economics. So it's really good to see that what's been going on recently is an event that's triggering lots of people to get newly interested in what is a really important and fascinating subject. So that's great to see. Another thing that's great to see is people having a renewed focus on their finances. And it's kind of a funny situation because some people's finances will, of course, have been affected very badly because they might have lost their job. But other people are going to be in a stronger financial position because they've kept their job or been furloughed. And their expenses will have gone down a lot because of no commuting costs, holidays being cancelled, not eating out and things like that. But whatever the situation, everyone is focusing on their finances more than before. We did a whole episode on personal finance back in episode 374. So if you haven't listened to that, strongly suggest you do because there's loads of interesting tips in there. And something you said during that episode, Rob, is that you've been doing what a lot of people have been doing, which is going and looking at some of the things you've been spending money on and reconsidering whether those are worth it for you still.
Yeah, I've done that in personal life and in business as well. We've looked at costs there and gone, do we really need this thing? Why are we spending on that? It's just given people the opportunity to focus. I mean, this is probably a theme through all the points, really. It's refocusing. And we certainly have refocused within the business. And I've done the same at home as well. So finances is such a huge part of property investment. You can't be a successful property investor and be poor with your finances. The two don't match. So if this is not a trait, a habit that you are particularly strong on right now, and maybe you're new to property investment, this is one where you can really focus on right now. Make sure you put yourself in the best possible place so you can take advantage of all the wonderful things property investment does bring. And Rob, the final one on the list is getting yourself ready to do the deals, coming out stronger and taking advantage of deals and moving forward. But everyone's jumped the gun. The market is really strong at the moment. And the media might not be reporting this yet. And the figures might not be showing this yet. And we'll talk about this more in the market updates that we do each month. People have come out and gone, right, I'm ready. I want to go. I want to invest. And not just people in the UK, people all around the world are looking at the UK and going, right, pound's cheap. Oh, it's a safe place. Let's invest. So if you're not in that category yet, you're not the ones who are alert and active, you might want to wake up a bit. You don't necessarily have to rush into anything, but at least prepare yourself for the possibility of making an investment. If you were going to do it earlier this year and COVID's put the brakes on that, then make sure that you're now back researching the markets that you were before, see what's changed, speaking to local agents, letting agents as well, resuming contact with your mortgage broker if you had one to see what products are out there right now and what options are available to you, so that when an opportunity comes along, you can strike, you can go for it straight away. If you are pausing right now, what trigger do you need to start again? You have to ask yourself that as well, because what you don't want to do is sit on the fence until the market's absolutely booming and go, oh, wait a minute, I should have invested after lockdown started to ease off. So give yourself that trigger. If you're not quite comfortable yet, What conditions have to happen? What things have to change for you to get comfortable? Because if you're just going to wait until the media sentiment changes, then you're going to be investing at the wrong time. The media will catch up and the media will start to big up property soon. But if you're going to let the media be your investment guide, then I think you're not going to do too well over the long term.
No, I think it's so important to have an opinion, have a view, whatever that view is. That view might be now's the time, or you might have a good reason for holding off and thinking that there'll be better opportunities in the future. But whatever view you hold, it's important to have come to that view for a reason and to hold it actively, rather than just having your views buffeted around by the media like Rob's described. And a good way of coming to that view is to see what other investors are doing and seeing what people are doing in different areas as well. So in episode 381, we talked to Chris Ryder about what he was doing in serviced accommodation, a sector that's been very, very hard hit. But some of the things that he's been doing to minimise the impact has been great. And some of the opportunities he's talking about were really interesting as well. We also spoke to Natalie in episode 384, who's in the midst of some fairly serious projects. And she was talking about how she's more cautious than she was before, but she's not letting that stop her. And she's just used it as an opportunity to go back and look at some of her criteria for getting into deals. But this point, being ready to take action, that's really a combination of everything that we've just talked about. Being a successful property investor, and indeed Rob, being successful at anything, is a combination of all of these things, and you have to be strong at all of them.
Yeah, the chances are you are doing some of the things we've listed already, but are you doing them all? Because to be a successful property investor, to be successful at anything really, you'll want to adapt the majority, if not all, of the things that we've listed. Setting goals, having that vision, having the habits, the discipline to then go and hit those goals, making sure your finances place, making sure you're mentally resilient, making sure that the things that come your way, you're going to be able to deal with, because property investment isn't rainbows and unicorns. You're going to have tough days. And then, of course, taking action. None of this happens without the action. So you have to do that as well. So it's working on all of these things that are going to put you in the strongest place to making the most successful property investor. So have a little review, have a reset, give yourself some time today. Even if it's 10 minutes, reflect on the checklist that we've given you and go, which ones am I nailing and which ones do I need to work at? And then what are you going to do? What actions are you going to take to make sure that the ones that you're not quite happy with, you go on to make those changes?
The end result of everything that we've talked about in this episode is hopefully having some success. And when you do have success, we love to hear about it. So whatever success means to you, whether it's big or small, let us know. You can do it in the form of a podcast review. We love that. You could do it on the Property Hub forum, or you can find us on all the socials at Property Hub UK. And Brad sent us a message on Instagram to share his success story. He said, I want to send a message as I've been listening to your podcast for over a year now and have since, with my parents, managed to get them to purchase a buy-to-let property, which has been very successful. And we've also agreed a sale on another property a few weeks ago. We're keen to keep investing in these current times when rental demand is high. Keep up the good work. Well, that is really good to hear, Brad. Not just that you are enjoying the podcast and getting something out of it, but you're taking your family along with you and doing something that's going to improve the lives, hopefully, of all of you. So well done, and you keep up the good work.
It's time for Hub Extra now, the part of the show where we give you that little bit more. And remember, this is backed up with our weekly email that goes out every Friday to everyone who's part of Property Hub. And you may say, ooh, what's that going to cost me? Well, my friend, it's completely free. Just sign up and you'll be able to access all the free courses that we've talked about in this episode, and you'll get the Hub Extra email in your inbox every Friday. And this week, we're giving you a quote, because it's that kind of episode. I think a quote is really useful here. And the quote is from Dennis Adonis, and he is an author. And the quote is, never restart a journey and use the same road that failed you before. I think that nails pretty much everything that we've talked about today. If you wanted the same results as you previously achieved in your life, just carry on as you were. But if you're hoping for bigger and better things, if you're hoping for more happiness or whatever you're striving for, then you have to do something different. And use this opportunity. It's a reset for us all. Often we wait till New Year for a reset. It's a kind of, right, now I'm going to make changes. But this is much bigger than a new year, what we've gone through. So make much bigger changes. Take bolder action. Because if you do change the path of the future, if you do make different changes, different choices, focus on what's important to you, then the destination can be very different to the destinations and the success that you've been hitting before. Dramatically different. But you have to make that change. Don't go back to your old habits and routines if they weren't serving you well. Look at doing something different. Look at making those changes even if you were reasonably content before, because we can all, every single one of us, improve for the better.
Well, when you're reviewing your life, there's one habit that you should not change, and that is listening to the Property Podcast, because we've got a couple of cracking episodes coming up. We've got our market update in 2 weeks' time, and next week, another very important episode about how to overcome a challenge that almost everyone will face at some point in their property journey. So you will not want to miss that one. Before then, of course, we've got Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday. And if you can't wait that long for more Property Hub goodness, go check out our YouTube channel where there's loads more goodies waiting for you. For now, though, thanks for listening and we'll bid you goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.